I'm back.
We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland, Majority Report.
Hello.
Otka Dragon, do you think Elon Musk's abandonment of his kids has to do with his belief in eugenics?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so I can't believe that you guys didn't play that yesterday.
Well, it's an older clip.
Is it really older? Okay, then maybe I see, you can never tell. But Elon Musk walking away from his kid, it's just amazing.
Black-pilled Kiwi. This show is hard to pin down on Ukraine, so I just want to put this to you guys. If Ukraine is pressured into concessions to Russia through the withholding of military aid, is that an acceptable situation for left-wing ideological priorities?
It depends on what the concessions are. I mean, I want to see the end to this conflict. The idea that anyone on the left would be denying who the aggressor is in this instance, that's crazy. And I don't think that there are many people. I think it's overstated. Russia obviously invaded Ukraine and is the aggressor. But it can also be true that Biden's tripling down on like NATO expansion and sending this many arms without seemingly having an overarching end goal in mind perhaps has exacerbated the situation and wasn't the best route to go down. And so I'm very much in opposition to Donald Trump just taking Russia's side. And now you see Russia and Israel voting together with the United States at the UN. Like now we're the axis of aggressors. But it depends really on what the concessions are. So that's the reality of it.
I would also say, like, you know, to the extent that we can divine what Ukrainians want is what where I tend to land on this. I don't think that the U.S. should be inhibiting Ukrainian aspirations. This is a situation where, you know, to the extent that I don't think we're going to as much, the extent that we're arming Ukraine, it is in light of an invasion by another country in service of an agreement we made with them 40 years ago, 30 years ago, to give up nuclear weapons. And so, you know, if I had to guess, I think it's unlikely that they're going to get back territory that they had in 2013. Yeah. But
also, there's more appetite for negotiation within Ukraine than there was a year ago.
That's my sense. You know, if you look at like polling.
Right. And it also depends on the people who are in the regions that would be affected. So that's where we have to ask those particular questions.
It's why we're open to a two-state solution, even though we'd note, like, from an ideological or pure, like, theory standpoint, one democratic state in Palestine would be the proper solution. But ultimately, like, stopping bloodshed and war is, you know, order of the day.
New Jersey mailman, Sam, you have a show where you can literally have a Ukrainian civilian on to ask what they want. Well, I think it really is going to take more than one civilian to determine. I mean,
But it's also a question of like, what is, I appreciate the sentiment, but the reason I think that we focus so much on, first of all, there was a genocide in Gaza in comparison to Ukraine, is like, there's no shortage of pro-Ukraine voices on mainstream press. And that's the reality of it. And so what counter narrative are we providing here? Or like what gaps are we filling? Because the United States is against, or under Biden was against the aggressors here, it lines up so that there are many pro-Ukrainian voices, and it's a very mainstream opinion on the Democratic side of the party. So I'm not necessarily sure what this show would provide in that way.
Well, and I'd also say, like, some so-called pro-Ukraine voices are selling them something that wasn't ever on the table, which is like actually support to win this war. Yeah. And so, like, when Richard Blumenthal, senators, go out there and say, like, we're going to fight to the end, And actually, you look at the way that America has been supporting it, which is to not really be that offensive and basically like kind of restrain the Ukrainian forces. Like we were never actually. Unfortunately, what Hillary said was going to happen has happened, which is that it's going to be in Afghanistan where we have people die and try to just bleed Russia. But what that means for Ukraine, I mean, we see.
Yeah. I mean, and the Ukrainian people still have sovereignty, and it depends on, they I know organically want to fight Russia, right? But the question is, what place does the United States have in terms of negotiating this? And we supported helping Ukraine fight Russia and arming them. But I also think that we have to have an end point in mind here. But the Trump administration just siding with Russia and repeating complete lies about who invaded who is certainly not the way to go.
Pinky, the Brainworms, please tell me you've seen the great Gary Stevenson's Gary Economics School, Piers Morgan and Dave Rubin. No, but I do have that video up in front of me, so we'll later. Spilkus, Insane Clown Posse, a.k.a. U.S. federal government. Chivitar, hey Sam, I know you're a fan of the 90% tax rate. Can you explain the difference between that and the 94% rate in 1945? Something about a surtax? I don't know. I cannot. Sorry. I've seen this. It's okay.
I think it's so good.
All right, let's play it then.
What?
Here is
It's not on the sheet, but
what's this guy's name?
This is Alex Byra.
Alex Byron. I don't know who he is. A comedian, I guess. This is his Elon Musk. It's better if you close your eyes.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't look like Musk at all, and he doesn't have. He sort of has the affectations, but he wants this rated. I mean, I would give it like a 7.8.
It takes a little bit to get cooking, but once he does the knock knock joke or whatever they set up, the light bulb joke, I think is really cooking.
Yeah. So comedy, they're trying to take this away. No, not gonna let them. Yeah, I saw Tony Hinchcraft at the skit, and he said Puerto Rico was a pile of garbage, and it's like, yeah, well,
it's great.
It is. So, yeah, I'm having sex, I love doing it. Yeah, I got one. So, how many Democrats does it take to screw in a light bulb? It's like, well, yeah, so many, because they got to do pronouns and just need. Doge is going to work on that. Yeah, but they're going to get me and Grimes when we would have sex, right? And yeah, it's like, we'd have like charging up like anime, and I'd go in from the back and I'd be like, I'm going to put a baby inside you. I called my nuts the Dragon Balls. I love anime, and my favorite comedian.
Okay, yeah, that's Alex Byra.
I thought that was pretty good. I tried to look away so I wouldn't be able to see his face. It sounds like
the problem
him.
is I watched him first and I got too distracted by he doesn't obviously look like, but it's when it sounds it's very good.
I mean,
how many Dems does it take to screw into a light bulb? Like so many.
So many. Also, I still don't know if we have any evidence that Elon Musk has ever had sex.
Yeah.
That is also an open question. We know that he's very interested in producing males in a way that seems to have been predetermined by science. Isn't that
He orders them.
central claim of his latest consort or the woman who the mother of his latest child, right?
Well, I mean, that he's a deadbeat, I think, is the main thing that she's talking about.
Interesting. Yeah. We still don't know if he's capable of even having sex. That's an open question.
Peppadew, as a purely app listener, it sounded like that was Elon. Same with Scary Mountain Wizard. Same with Dan from Columbus. If I wasn't watching on YouTube, I'd think that's actually Elon.
I mean,
Kat says that impression made me physically cringe, so it was accurate.
him and Peter Thiel have the same affectation of being unable to speak, basically. Is what
Add
I'm
Mark
trying to say.
Andreessen to that list.
There is a neuroatypicalness, I think, that they share.
Definitely, and also a whole sociopathy thing.
Yes. And also South African in their accent, which also South Africa has the most awkward accent, I think, of any like English speaking, like when you hear a South African speak English.
Yeah.
It's a little awkward when you're, a settler colonial society, right? To make
in
work.
general, yeah.
Make that work.
646-257-3920 is the number. 646-257-3920 is the number if you want to participate in the program. This is both depressing and, I think a sense of how Trump is not addressing any of the concerns of the American public. Here is Harry Enton. And I think, I don't know that Trump really, he may not care as long as Elon Musk is around, because he may feel like Musk's money is going to protect him. And at the very least, he's got the Supreme Court has already said that he's not capable of being prosecuted.
Mm-hmm. That's part of why he ran for president again. What, if not the motivating reason, which was I need to get these 92 court cases off my back, and he's succeeded. So, what is his agenda now? What does he care about now? I think maybe he has some dirty deal with these crypto bros about his meme coin. That's my theory right now, is getting rich off of that, and that's why having Elon Musk around.
Oh, he's made so much money just in the past 6 months,
right?
And I think he sort of feels like he has no jeopardy. There's no jeopardy going to jail. He's got Musk doing most of the work. He can play golf. He can work 2 or 3 days a week, maybe. And so I don't know how much he cares, but it's going to make it a little bit more difficult for the people who don't feel like they're going to be, dead in the next 10 years. And they're not Donald Trump in terms of the Republican politicians. Here's Harry Enton.
Rutrow, the reboot not as well received as the original. Economy is currently good or excellent. Look at this. In April of 2017, it was 40%. Look at where we are in February of 2025, just half that level. 20%. My goodness gracious. The term one high was 63% of Americans in February of 2020 thought the economy was excellent or good. This 20% we have currently going on right now is fewer Americans saying the economy is excellent or good than at any point during Trump's first term. This is not a good sign, Kate Baldwin.
J.D. Vance said last week, you got to give them time, even though that's not what they promised in the campaign. They said they bring prices down day one. But what is the view of the future economy then?
Yeah, so this is the current economy.
Oh, pause it for 1 second. Oh, that's interesting. J.D. Vance said that? I didn't realize he was still vice president.
Right. Elon Musk is the guy that's always being seen publicly.
Isn't Trump. Vance the one who brings, who's basically caddying for Trump?
I mean, that's a really quick drop off. The honeymoon period. This is
very quick.
I've never seen something like this, really. I mean, Joe Biden, I'm looking at when he finally crossed, according to the 538 average, the more disapproval than approval in September of 2021. So it was an 8-month, essentially, honeymoon period, and people mark that by the Afghanistan withdrawal. This is a month for Donald Trump. I mean, even less. Those are the economic numbers. But we also saw last week, I headlined this, multiple polls showing that within, I guess it was Quinnipiac, that he had a 10-point increase in disapproval rating to make it above 50% disapproval within less than a month. And then the economic numbers are showing it as well.
Said last week, you got to give them time, even though that's not what they promised in the campaign. They said they bring prices down day one. But what is the view of the future economy then? Yeah, so this is the current economy. How about the future economy? Is the economy getting worse
or better. And all I can say is yikes. Yikes. Again, compare it to where we were in the first term at this point, April of 2017, 53%. The majority said it was getting better. How about now in February of 2025? The majority say it's getting worse. 59% compared to just 35% who say it's getting better. Worse is higher now than at any point in Trump's first term pre-COVID. This number, to me, is much more worrisome. Perhaps the worst number I've seen for Trump on the economy, because it says even if the economy now isn't great, they also project that it's only going to get worse from here. This is a big, big yikes.
And fold in inflation, just like general views on inflation.
Yeah, okay. So I think the question is, what's exactly cooking here? What is going on? You know, there's this whole idea that Trump was going to bring down inflation, right, Kate? So what are Americans actually saying? You know, are Google searches for inflation going down or going up? They're going up. They're up 123% from February of 2017. And more than that, perhaps even more important, they're up 23% from last month. Americans' fears about inflation are not going away. They are as interested in it as they were by the end of the Joe Biden administration. And the bottom line is they're far more interested in it than they were at any point during Donald Trump's first term. As I said at the beginning, the reboot, the sequel, is not being anywhere near as well received as the original.
There it is.
That is, that's the most important, I think, number. The idea that over the past month, people have gotten more concerned about inflation, and they certainly can't, there would be no way for anyone to assume that the federal government is doing anything about inflation right now. In fact, I think the thing that they don't understand, that folks like Russell Vogt and Republican lawmakers don't understand, is that I don't think there's the same hostility towards the federal government that they think there is.
No.
And federal government workers. And on top of which, they, I think the idea of people losing their jobs willy-nilly, literally willy-nilly, creates anxiety amongst other people. I don't, you know, if you see your neighbor lose their job, if you see two people on your block lose their job, you start to get worried about your job. If you start hearing about people losing their job, 1,500 at, you know, at the VA and 1,500 there and 1,500 there, you start to worry that maybe your job is not so safe, even if it's just being done randomly by some billionaire.
Right. I mean, this might be just a good time to show that map of like when they're cutting this federal workforce, how destabilizing it is. Right, Sam, if you agree here, just the Dan Abash quick clip here on CNN showing the map of the states that voted for Donald Trump and how many people work for the federal government in those states.
As you kind of digest that, there's something else that our team put together, and I think that this is really critical for people to understand. Look at this map. That is a map of where federal workers are who are living in the states that Trump won. Look at that number. It's almost 1 million people. So yes, it's own Washington, drain the swamp, all the things. But the reason why we are starting to see and hear more concern and even backlash around the country, and even from Republican House members and senators, is because these are their constituents.
Can we just keep that map up for just a second there so we can see it? Nearly 130K federal workers in Texas. I mean, that's a very populous state. But Oklahoma, 41,000 people? As you say? I mean, North Dakota, Matt, less than 1 million people living in that state, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, probably 750,000 less, I checked.
These
5,600?
People have families, they have friends, the anxiety spreads throughout. Remember, on top of this, you can lay on top of this all the cuts to the grants and, like, you know, whatever it is.
Oh, yeah.
Like we you know, Alabama, what was it? University of Alabama, was it?
Yep.
Like the biggest employer in the state relies heavily on NIH grants.
University of North Dakota gets a lot of NIH grants.
And they're gone away. People are freaking out.
Right. I mean, look at Georgia there. That's a really important state. Almost 80,000 federal employees there. Off the top of my head, I believe there are many FAA workers down there, but I could be wrong.
And 20,000 West Virginia, can they afford to just eat 20,000 layoffs?
Yeah.
The amazing thing is that I still remember when we were told the government doesn't create jobs.
Oh, sorry. It was the CDC in Atlanta.
And
That's where it is.
Think about what's
Yes.
happening. The government is taking money through progressive taxation from billionaires and millionaires and employing people across all of these different states to do jobs for society. And we're told that's waste.
Yeah.
Folks can't hear the clips while they're on the phone. We've got to fix that. Calling from a 585 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello, is this me?
Yes, it is you. Who is this?
Hi, this is Cal. I'm calling from Rochester, New York.
Okay, Cal from Rochester. What's on your mind?
Well, I wanted to talk about a little bit about my story with Medicaid
Okay.
and healthcare in general. So I was diagnosed with a genetic disorder when I was just starting high school. This would have been around 2000.
Okay.
So I lived in North Carolina. That's where I grew up. And that was a state, this is before the Affordable Care Act. So already, that was back when pre-existing were a thing. And by the time I became an adult, I already had pre-existing.
Okay, I just want to, because I don't know, there are people who listen in the show who don't really understand what that means as much, because and I've said this for years, the really genuinely effective part of the ACA, in addition to the expansion of Medicaid, was the patient protection part of the ACA. The ACA part, the cost, not so great. But the patient protection part, pre-existing conditions. So you have this genetic disorder that you find out when you're in high school. You're covered under your parents' insurance at that point. But once you age out, because now you age out at 26, but then I think it was like when you stopped becoming a dependent. So it was probably like around 18 or 21. What happened to you then?
Right, exactly. Pre-existing is that you could be denied outright any coverage for that issue if you aren't, those of you who aren't familiar with what that means. So basically the biggest part that you need care for, the insurance companies could be like, well, that was before you got care. It's too expensive. We won't cover it. So when I started searching for coverage, they quoted me, I want to say this is $600, and I'm working at a fast food place. That's more than my rent for this essential coverage. And at the same time, I found out also I had a chronic illness, which is Crohn's disease. So that was another thing that they wouldn't cover, because that was before I started making calls too. Around 2010, because my genetic disorder is pretty rare and actually makes me chromosomally intersex, I don't have the typical XY formation. I have like an X and an O, so basically just one. For those curious, I have to educate a lot of my healthcare providers, actually. It's an interesting thing. Yes, I went up to the NIH for a study. Around 2010, they paid for my flight up there. I think I was there a couple of days, and they did a bunch of surveys. They looked at my heart, because one of the things that could happen is the valve can dissect if you have my genetic disorder, which is called Turner syndrome. So all of these screens and studies they did are still used by my healthcare providers today. All of this was free. It would have been who knows how much if I would have had to do these necessary things out of pocket. Everyone there was amazing. They were so kind. And I mentioned to them, I went up there for my genetic disorder. I mentioned I was struggling with Crohn's. the medication I was on wasn't helping. I was literally, while working, would have to like take breaks to go like sit in a corner because I was hurting. Right. So they sent me home with medicine. They packed it as much as they could fill it into my suitcase. And this would have been more than $1,000 worth of medicine they just gave me to go home with, to give me some time to, to prepare. Because these medicines were also, I think, if I remember right, a monthly dose of these pills was $600 at the time. So fast forward years, I end up in Rochester, New York, because I had friends here, and I was like, well, healthcare is not great. They told me that this was a good place to come to, and I did. And I ended up in the ER because I was in and out. I got taken on by a GI immediately. I got on Medicaid. They started me on a new medicine. The GI I'd seen in North Carolina wouldn't tell me about other medication options. He flatly told me I could not afford them.
Jeez.
So then my health improved drastically on this new medicine. I ended up having to get surgery to repair the years of scarring because I wasn't being properly treated. But now I'm basically symptom-free for the most part. And it's all thanks to Medicaid, really. But I've been seeing conversations about the NIH, and I don't think a lot of people understand what they do or what it's like to interface with them as someone with a health condition.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate hearing your story. Thank you for telling us.
Yes, thank you for letting me share. And you guys are awesome. I'm a pretty new listener, and it's great to be able to have this space.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for calling.
Thank you.
Back to the phones. Calling from a 509 area code. Who's this?
Hey, Sam, it's Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan. Long time no talk to.
I know. How are you?
Well, fine.
Great.
Hey, Reagan.
Oh, hi. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
You're a lot more enthusiastic to talk to Emma. All right, go ahead.
I'm good, thanks. Well, I mean, huge caveat, everything's on fire. But, well, first of all, are you going to run for Senate, yes or no?
I'm not going to listen. Right now, my job is to be the host of this show, and I'm going to focus all of
I'll see you out the trail.
Focus all my energy on that right now.
Okay, strong yes vibes from that answer. So real quick, on Ukraine, my wife is from Ukraine, and she went, in November, she went back to, she had to bury her father who passed away. So, it was not like an easy trip to make, but, she went with her mom, and they were pretty sure, it's safe in Kyiv. It's very well protected, which is true. But I think it was a really traumatic experience. There was, in the week and a half she was there, maybe one night where they weren't, woken up by, they have a series of alerts when there's drones, when there's ballistic missiles, you can hear things being intercepted. You've got to go down to the subway or go into the hallway of your apartment building. And so, I mean, the attitude in Ukraine, I think, has definitely, I can't speak for Ukraine, all Ukrainians, but when you see in the polls that there's more and more openness to negotiations and concessions, I mean, people are exhausted. It's in a lot of ways, it's a psychological warfare. You have a city of millions of people, and people aren't sleeping. So for going on three years now, people are not really getting sleep, and then you're supposed to just go to work and act like nothing's going on. And that's really, really hard. So, but to the extent like you guys need to talk about it or should talk about it. I mean, I don't like lectures like that, but when I called about this a couple of years ago, one of the things I mentioned was that Putin had just given a speech where he talked about how in the West, kids go to school and change their gender. And it sounded, I said at the time, it sounded like a Tucker monologue, because Tucker was still in the air at the time. And really what it sounds like now is Trump's campaign speeches.
Yeah.
And I think there is, and some people took that to mean like we should fight in Ukraine to protect trans kids. And really my point was there's a broad global right-wing movement, and there are ties between something stupid like Joe Rogan, talking about, trans kids in sports, and Trump and Elon and this other thing. So, I mean, the other thing being
you're right
Putin
about
and
that.
the right.
Matt Duss had a piece just the other day. I don't know where it was that I read it, where he was making this point.
I think that you were also on point about this in a way that perhaps some folks, on the left liberal side were slow to catch up with, but it's been the vision of Steve Bannon too, like the Orban style politics that really, and I think then you have the tech bros with their anarcho-capitalist thing, with Millet wanting to merge those two visions. But when it comes to Putin saying all that stuff about, that echoes the right here, I think that vote on Ukraine at the United Nations was very scary and interesting and bolsters your point, where you have Russia, Israel, and the United States voting against that resolution together. China abstaining. You see that your vision, your hypothesis basically coming together, where under Trump's leadership and then Putin and then Netanyahu, this is I call it the axis of aggressors, or basically the right-wing bullies coming together, and that is the coalition that Trump is seeking.
The other thing, thank you. I totally agree. And I think to Matt's point, you would think, well, Ukrainians should really like Biden because of all the assistance and the help. But the truth is, maybe there's some that feel that way, but I know a lot of the people I've talked to were just frustrated more than anything else, because literally every step along the way there was sort of needless feet dragging for different types of aid, different types of systems or planes or whatever. It felt like, if, like Matt said, if you wanted to fight to win, those decisions, and I know it's complicated because of the N word, right? But the nukes, but it didn't, a lot of the feet dragging didn't seem to make a lot of sense or to help the situation. And it did. I mean, if you wanted to put a tinfoil hat on, you would say, it seems like there was a decision to let them float along without giving them the tools to actually make decisive gains or victory.
There are two things. One, it is quite apparent to me that, or was at the time, that the Biden administration did not think that, they overestimated Russia's ability to invade and conquer within a week. I'm convinced they thought, I mean, you remember all the warnings, they weren't sending weapons. And it took really a week before the rhetoric changed and people realized, wait a second, maybe Russia's a little bit more of a paper tiger than we thought. And then the second issue is what Clinton said at the time, which was that it is in the United States' best interest to just let this be an extended war of attrition, because you could defeat Russia quickly, I mean theoretically, right, and drive them out, and by showing some type of overwhelming force, or you could just sort of drag Russia into an extended quagmire that slowly bleeds them. And I think from the United States perspective, if they, this is what their strategic, vision was. I mean, I think that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah. And I think, tragically, I think Putin's going to get the relief he's been seeking. And, if you follow the situation closely, they're not in a great situation. So to the extent you wanted to sort of bleed them out and have a slow progressive victory, there's an argument that you could be somewhat close in that they're relying on North Korean troops and they're very poorly armed and equipped. And so the idea that you would pursue that strategy for 3 years and then, we elect our own fascist who's basically
that's the thing is that Biden, I don't know if there was ever someone who ever had a greater estimation of themselves than Joe Biden relative to his abilities. Biden thought I'm gonna take care of this in February.
Basically, yeah.
Biden right now, Biden 6 months ago, even or a year ago, he's like, okay, in February is when I start to put the hammer down and we accelerate this thing. And I'm convinced, it was quite clear that there was not going to be any type of resolution to this or any fundamental change in U.S. policy until after the election. And it was either going to go one way or the other way.
And I think Biden
went the wrong way.
Hurt his negotiating position because the United States had an opportunity to reassert soft power in the wake of Donald Trump's chaos, and Biden bogging us down once again in the genocide in Gaza, I think hurt his negotiating position there, or his ability to I don't know, make this come to an end in any real way. And then the question is if Trump and the Republicans decide to cut off Zelensky for whatever petty reason Trump is saying, do they go to the European parties to seek weaponry? And is there an opportunity for other right-wing European leaders or whatever, as we're seeing the global far right have success in some European countries? Do they start to dip their toe in here? And that's some of the chaos that Trump could cause, right? With basically taking Russia's side here. Right.
Yeah. And just to close it out, I guess on a happy note, sarcasm. I don't know that we're totally prepared for what it could look like to have a shutdown of U.S. support. If they shut down Starlink like they're threatening, if they stop providing the air defense missiles and things like that. The bombs and the explosions that are being heard all night long in Kyiv are not, for the most part, hitting their target. There's still debris and things like that, and occasionally something will get through. But there's a possibility for it to get. It's already ugly, but there's a real potential for it to get very bad. So anyhow, thanks for all you do, and appreciate you guys.
That was a happy note.
Appreciate you.
Good job.
Bye.
Bye.
That's the one thing is I think I've heard internally Trump people talk about Ukraine is they don't want it to be his Afghanistan and tank his numbers like Afghanistan did for Joe.
Although it might be in Afghanistan in a different sense, right, in terms of trying to use Afghanistan in the way that we did to bleed the Soviets. But that was the vision that Hillary Clinton accidentally said out loud. It's not that Hillary was in power, but given the fact that she was Secretary of State, this is indicative of how these people think within the national security establishment.
Can I also just push back on one thing about the Afghanistan? Yeah. I do not believe that Joe Biden's poll numbers dropped because of Afghanistan. Right. It was because, from a legislative perspective, from dealing with domestic things, he was dilly-dallying around with all the Republicans and moved from we're getting stuff done for the American people mode into look how I am bringing together the country, i.e., these 50 people who are in Washington.
Right. Right. Gave them an opportunity to catch their breath and got like a 9th of Build Back Better pass in the end. Complete outrage.
Calling from a 619 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Max calling from South Carolina.
Max from South Carolina. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a bit of a ground sit rep for the LGBT organization that's happening in South Carolina.
Sure.
Quick signal boost for the Alliance for Full Acceptance. Their website is affa-sc.org.
Whoa.
They are organizing.
Tell me that again.
Yep. affa-sc.org.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we've got that.
They're a nonprofit. Thank you. They're a nonprofit in South Carolina, and they are responding in a big way to the inauguration. We have a supermajority of Republicans in the state house, so it's looking a little dire, but I do have a good sort of optimistic report of a recent training that I went to, Advocacy 101. We had about 30 people show up Saturday. This was just this Saturday at 10 a.m. to learn about the state legislative process and to be empowered and to, kind of get engaged with the state level politics. And the sense of optimism that I walked away with is that state level lawmakers will respond to the pressure that we put on them. And March 4th at 9 a.m., there's going to be an event at the State House in Columbia. That's going to be a public hearing on the total abortion ban. So if you had to guess what a supermajority of Republicans are up to in the state of South Carolina,
right?
Most of the legislative agenda is cookie cutter Heritage Foundation stuff, which of course is scary, but the people who gave the training definitely instilled a sense of optimism and empowerment to us by saying that a lot of state lawmakers are about 5 to 10 phone calls from their constituents away from changing their mind on a bill. And they're going to do an Advocacy 201 training. If you go to their website, you can register. It's all for free. They're a nonprofit. And if you're in South Carolina, they're also doing all of this training hybrid, so you can attend virtually if you're not. They tend to organize in the Charleston area. But yeah, anyways, I just wanted to say thank you for covering what you cover. Thank you for taking my call. And to all of my LGBT people in South Carolina, stay strong, organize, and call your representative.
I have a question for you. Do you know if you can call in there if you're not from South Carolina? Like, it's just as a resource on how to organize in general? Because, this is the thing that people don't, I think, fully appreciate is, particularly on a state level, how much influence you can have. But even on a national level, depending on what the issue is, a lot of these representatives in particular feel vulnerable, and the amount of people that they hear from is so much less than people assume. And I would just say, as an analogy, you can see people online on Twitter who with big followers will engage with one person who's got 3 followers or whatnot. Somebody's gotten under their skin, I should say. Let me put it this way, right? Because I don't want to make it sound like you should but somebody's gotten under their skin. They're having a meaningful argument with them, and they're changing their behavior because of that one person. That dynamic exists in humans. And all of these lawmakers are humans, and they don't, if the squeaky wheel gets the oil, for the most part.
JJ writes in, AOC is advocating for an app called 5 Call to give scripts and advice for calling your elected officials. I've heard great things about 5 Calls. That's one place to start if you want to start making some calls.
That was a Trump 45 original. I'm pretty sure 5 Calls came around then.
Oh.
Commandeered.
All right. Well, appreciate the call.
Sorry, Sam, what was your question?
Well, I want to know if people could call in if they're not, but I guess they can ask on there, right? I mean, you can sign up. We just scroll up on that site, Matt. People can ask if they can just join if it.
They can donate. You could take action.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for the call.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
That reminds me of a good part of Ta-Nehisi Coates' recent book that wasn't emphasized a lot in the press, but there was a teacher in South Carolina that got, I think, fired or suspended or some sort of action because she taught one of his books. And he went down to the school board meeting and they showed up in large numbers. They were expecting like maybe a lot of protests, but they completely swamped anybody who was against it. And I just have a lot of respect for people in states that are very conservative showing up like that.
Right. I mean, especially on LGBTQ issues, I know somebody doing work on that in a red state whose passport, they tried to renew it so they would have an updated gender marker during the Trump administration, sent it in after the inauguration. Last I checked with this person, their passport was still on hold, and sometimes they're just like, my question was, well, can you get your original document back so you at the very least have a passport that maybe they say you can't renew it with an M, but you'll have the old one that may be expired, right? Even if it doesn't last you through the whole Trump administration. Last I checked, they just didn't receive it back. Right. And then we had this viral story with Hunter Schafer, this wonderful actress from Euphoria and Cuckoo and all these other great films who...
Euphoria is a movie.
It's a show.
Okay.
Close enough. But very popular show, and she is the best thing about it. The first season is great because she incorporated she wrote a lot of it. And a lot of it is about her experience growing up trans. She grew up in North Carolina and was a part of was a plaintiff and I think an ACLU lawsuit about the bathroom bills. Her activism is a huge part of what she does. She was also a part of Jewish Voice for Peace protests unrelated to this, but like Hunter Schafer's the best of us right now. And she had her passport stolen at one point and had to reapply for one. And as one of the most high profile trans actors in the country, to have this happen to her, it's just a gut check.
Hello, Internet. I don't really post much these days, but I had a bit of a harsh reality check today and felt like it's important to share with whoever is listening. So I'm sure most of us remember on, I think, the first day of Trump's presidency, he signed an executive order to declare only two genders recognized by the state, male and female, assigned at birth. And as a result of this, which I wrote down because I want to get it right, the Bureau of Consular Affairs has frozen passport applications requesting a gender marker change or renewals or new applications with a gender marker differing from an applicant's gender assigned at birth. So my initial reaction to this, because our president, is a lot of talk, was like, I'll believe it when I see it. And today, I saw it on my new passport mail. So now to specify, my gender markers were first changed in my teens when I first got my driver's license, and then passports following. All have been female since then. Hasn't really been a problem. However, last year when I was filming in Barcelona, our car got broken into and my bag got stolen, and inside of that was my passport, which was supposed to last me up until my 30s. And so I got an emergency passport, which was very simple at the time. It's basically just a copy of my old passport, but temporary and only supposed to be used within the year. So as soon as I got back to the States, I had to get this fixed and get it replaced with a real proper passport, which I went to the Federal Passport Agency today in LA and did. I've had to do this one time before. no part of the process was different. I filled everything out just like I normally would. I put female, and when it was picked up today and I opened it up, they had changed the marker to male. And I'm not making this post to fearmonger or to create like drama or receive consolation. I don't need it, but I do think it's worth posting to sort of note the reality of the situation and that it is actually happening. And I was shocked. I was shocked because I don't know. I just didn't think it was actually going to happen.
She has a longer explanation where she talks about it more, but yeah, this is what's happening. I mean, it's insane, and it feels like people.
Was there an existing record that she was trans?
Yeah.
So she goes into it and saying she didn't change her birth certificate, and her hypothesis is that they're cross-checking the birth certificates, and that's the only way she can think of that she was
identified that way. And she's also one of the most high-profile trans celebrities in the country and is super popular with younger folks.
I've never heard of her.
Yeah. Well, Laverne Cox is another person. Shout out to her.
I know Laverne Cox
because she likes our show.
Well, no, because I saw Orange is the New Black was the last show I think I saw on television.
Yes, you're really up to date here.
That's a newer show, right? When was the last time that was on?
Maybe a decade ago.
Yeah, it was popular 10 years ago. But she's just, I mean, first of all, I admire her activism in a variety of different areas. But like, this is important because it outs Hunter Schafer is somebody who's probably has a lot of money as an actress, maybe not a lot, but she's going to be comfortable and perhaps everybody in her industry knows that she's trans most likely, and when they cast her, they're likely aware of this. But how this really affects people is if you're not famous and you're applying for a job and you need to give a government document proving who you are. This outs you to your employer. This is a privacy violation. It outs you to your employer. And the Trump administration has openly said, we're going to allow employers, say you're a landlord, right? You want to rent and you need to provide government documentation, and it outs you as a trans person. They may not rent you. They may not hire you. There's already high rates of discrimination for LGBTQ plus people. This makes it even more difficult because it shows potential employers, shows potential landlords, or if you're trying to buy a home, this person is trans, so they know automatically, okay, I can discriminate against this person. That's what they're trying to do.
Also, I would imagine there are countries where there's, this country's, getting there, but there's, significant hostility to trans people.
Right.
And
all the lawsuits
you
are being
show up
dropped.
in that, that border crossing or, customs or whatever it is, that also creates an issue.
Right. She said she was abroad for when she was filming when her passport was stolen, and this outs her if she were to go abroad again, no matter where she goes. So, yeah, it's deeply depressing and disgusting, but this is where we're at. And Project 2025, for all the folks that wanted to downplay it, the attacks on trans people and LGBTQ plus people were a big part of what the promises were. And the Project 2025 tracker already shows that they're over 50% of the way through their anti-LGBTQ measures, which include rescinding Title IX rules that strengthened sexual assault and discrimination cases, removing words about gender identity and sexual orientation from federal rules, reversing prohibitions on healthcare discrimination based on gender identity. That more and more the Trump administration is implementing what they already promised.
A couple of people are IMing to say, getting there. I believe that the majority of American people, just as a cultural matter, are not as anti-trans as the rolling back of civil rights would suggest. That was my point.
Right.
In that moment, you know, I do not believe, you know, entering it. Maybe this is more aspirational. My sense is that a customs agent at a U.S. international airport is going to be, on balance, less hostile to a trans person coming in than in you know, many countries around the world. That was really my point.
Yeah.
I believe me. I am aware of both, like, what is happening here in terms of civil rights and also, you know, from a cultural standpoint. Calling from a 972 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Yes, hello. Is this Sam Seder on the Majority Report?
Yes.
My God, I've been calling and calling because this is Milo Yiannopoulos. I've been calling because I hear you want to talk to me about one Timothy Poole.
Sure. Yes, please do. Tell us.
Oh, I've been on that show too many times to count, but what are your questions? Please get on with it. I've got to go to my free doctor's appointment because I live in the UK.
What is this whole story about right-wing shows faking it until they make it? What did you mean by that?
Well, as you can tell by my accent, everything is fake around here. Whenever you start to get to the brass tacks of it, as for Tim, that beard is drawn on. I've been close to it, as have you. That beard is drawn on. I believe this is a young teenage boy.
You didn't even see that. You weren't even there. You weren't even there. You didn't even see that clip.
No, I saw it. I actually live on the compound. He lets me live there, and he brings me out when he wants a bit of fun.
What did you think of that comment?
And by that, I mean strong arguments. I don't mean whatever you've got thinking, whatever you're thinking, Sam Seder.
Milo Yiannopoulos, you sound suspiciously like Katharine Hepburn.
Well, I've spent I've spent a lot of time with Katharine. What other questions do you have about young people?
I think that's it.
I just like the transatlantic accent that you have.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't really work. Anyway, this is Jake from Dallas. Thank you for.
What is that? Was it a machine?
Yeah, I take a lot of my cues from one Ryan Murphy Brown, one RM, and so I get a.
So you have.
I thought I had more in the tank for that one, but I don't listen to Milo enough.
Yeah, I know. I could tell you didn't do your homework on that as much as you should have.
Yeah. One more thing, as an English teacher, I just want to suggest that. Actually, I had one other thing, which is that I really like whenever that was so satisfying watching the clips of all of the lawmakers get yelled at by their constituents at those town halls. Boy, howdy, that was awesome. Put it in my veins. That was incredible.
Yeah.
And I liked what the lady screamed at the very end, where she was like, go do your job. Because I think a lot of these lawmakers, particularly ones that don't actually have a clear vision for the future of the country and are just doing ideological things, they don't want to do their job. They're so lazy. Like, they would much rather have this South African immigrant come and do their job for them. And I think, like, the more that we can hammer that of just like, look, we elected you to do a job and you are gleefully letting someone else who is unqualified and unelected do that job. I don't know. It could be something to kind of drive home, especially with a lot of Republican lawmakers.
Well, I think just putting these lawmakers on notice that you can see that they're not doing their job.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they would much rather somebody else do it. That's why it's happening this way.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they have control over both legislative bodies. And it wouldn't be hard for them to find a spare, Democratic vote here or there, I would imagine, for some programs that they want to cut. But they don't want to cut.
Yeah.
They don't want to do that. They want to, like, waste and abuse.
So much reading,
Waste and abuse.
It's so much reading and having to think and talk to people and
but also having to own it, having to own the policy that they would have to cut, of touching that third rail, of cutting Medicare, of cutting Social Security, of cutting even Medicaid, and then having to go back to their constituents that benefit from these services and own it. I mean, that's what's threatening to them about this heightened protest time where people are actually reacting. Is that they may be held accountable. I mean, if a federal worker, if this keeps going on and a federal worker runs in some of these districts, I don't care if they're plus R17. It's in play. It's in play.
Yep.
And I'm for real about these midterms. Like, that is going to be a real issue for them if this continues to happen. So
let's hope.
Appreciate the call.
One final thing: as an English teacher, I have to have everybody read their the Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. If you haven't yet, it's heartbreaking, it's gut wrenching, but spiritually, I think it speaks to the moment. Thank you, guys.
Parable of the Sower.
Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. Yes.
Okay, I will do it.
Really beautiful, but I've taken so much of your time already. As has Milo. I kicked him out, so he's good. We're good there.
Appreciate
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Mike from Texas. I know an RM Brown bit when I hear it. The Massive. I'm waiting for someone to point out their rep is waste inefficiency in one of those meetings. Detective Dubois, Tim Pool apparently had a kid. What? Well, it sounded like that when I was there.
He didn't really answer.
He has the bedrooms for it.
David from the Bay. Sam, any word on when your Jubilee video is coming out? I think now, they pushed it. Wasn't it originally supposed to be March 3rd?
Q3 2027.
Yeah. No, it's March 12th.
Why?
I don't know. I don't know. I think they maybe they shot it on film and they're editing it on film. I don't know. I don't know. It feels like it should be
IMAX.
Yeah, right.
It should be out by now. Let's check in with these guys. Doge dividend checks is the title of this PBD podcast. I got news for you. There ain't going to be Doge dividend checks. Now, what there might be is tax cuts for Patrick Bet-David, but 40% already of the contracts that Doge has canceled have zero savings because they've already been paid out.
Right.
They've canceled. It's like you have
a contract for $10 million that has been over a 5-year period. They're saying it's $10 million in savings, but they've spent $8 million of it already.
Yeah,
right.
Except for in this instance, it sounds like they spent $10 million.
Right.
And they just canceled the contract. So we paid for it, but we're just not getting the full. It's like you bought a year of Majority Report, and you decide 6 months in, I'm not listening anymore.
Yeah.
It doesn't save you any money. I think actually we do prorate when we return, but we have better deals.
Well, we are the efficient.
The point being,
show.
They've got to make it like there's actually something going on other than the destruction of the administrative state. That's the only thing they care about. If they cared about taxpayer money, they wouldn't be giving huge tax breaks to billionaires who hoard money. Go ahead.
Oh, and this is, by the way, about Bolsonaro.
Next story, and you'll see why I'm going into this next story. Okay, so Brazil's Bolsonaro, charged over alleged coup that included a plan to poison Lula. Okay.
Wow.
Yes.
Damn.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a James Bond film.
So, prosecutor, again, this is AP News. Brazil's prosecutor general formally charged President Bolsonaro. Why don't they put the guy's name? They should put the guy's name. Bolsonaro with attempting a coup, alleging he agreed to a plan called Green and Yellow Dagger to poison President Luiz Lula da Silva and assassinate Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes. Bolsonaro's defense called the accusations dismaying and indignating, while his son, Senator Flavio Bolsonaro, dismissed the indictment as empty and politically motivated. The indictment, based on manuscripts, digital files, spreadsheets, and message exchanges described a coordinated effort to overturn Bolsonaro's 2022 election loss by pressuring military leaders, drafting legal cover, and citing riots. The Supreme Court will decide whether to proceed with a trial where Bolsonaro could face up to 20 years in prison, up to 40, up to 38 years, if convicted of attempting a coup. So now, you hear this story. While I'm there, I want to learn about what the system's like.
So just to preface this, he goes in a little bit on his trip to actually interview Bolsonaro, like in the days prior to that announcement.
Oh, okay. So he's just come back from an interview with Bolsonaro.
And he's talking about Brasilia here.
Which she was there just 2 months ago. We stayed at that hotel. And we went to the House, Congress. They walked us around Senate. They walked us around everywhere. We had a chance to see everything that was going on in Brazil. Interviews coming out on Monday. And while we're talking, here's what we learn about Brazil. Watch this. And why this applies to America. Americans, it's so important to realize this. Do you know, oh my God, do you know if Trump, his greatest accomplishment that he did on his first term, you know what it was? Flipping 3 seats.
That's right.
When he flipped 3 seats, you can call it luck, you can call it whatever. We were debating this, Brandon, a power, hand of God. You can call it whatever you want. Obama had 8 years. He flipped 1 seat. Trump had 4 years, flipped 3 seats, and one of the years was COVID year.
Okay, all right.
And he flipped 3 seats.
The revision. He's talking about the Supreme Court because he's leaving out the part so far where Bolsonaro wasn't just in the plot trying to poison Lula. There was also a plot to assassinate via firearm one of the Supreme Court justices. So this is what he's getting at here. So he's erasing the fact that Mitch McConnell just basically refused to use the Senate procedures that had been allowed prior to that to confirm Merrick Garland.
Well, he wouldn't even hold a hearing.
He wouldn't even hold a hearing, which is caused the Democrats, right? They changed the rules after that, right?
Well, he wouldn't hold. No. He just decided he was going to break every tradition. He claimed 9.5 months out from the election that you should not hold a hearing for a new Supreme Court justice. You should wait until after the election. However, they confirmed Amy Coney Barrett, the third of the seats, 3 weeks.
Right.
Before the election.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg had died right in the fall before the 2020 election.
Yep.
And just to note, President Bolsonaro was already tied to a political assassination of Marielle Franco in 2019. So where there's a lot of smoke here.
Yeah.
So wait a sec. So he's saying he amazingly flipped 3 seats. First of all, Mitch McConnell did it.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
You're talking about Supreme Court seats. Okay, gotcha.
Now here we have how many seats? 9. When he flipped at the end of his term, what was the number? Was it 6-3, Tom, or was it 5-4 at the end of his term?
Biden?
No, conservatives to liberals.
Yes. No, I think it was 6-3.
I think it was 6-3. Yes. Exactly. So he was at 6-3.
Is this a fucking politics show? Are you serious?
You also don't talk about the Supreme Court. That's why everyone's confused, because flipping seats is when you're referring to the
I thought he was saying, wait a second, did 3 people switch parties?
Obama apparently only flipped 1 seat in 8 years on the Democratic side.
Flip a seat. How do you flip the seat?
Yeah. I mean, you flip it when the Supreme Court justice flips right into a
I assassinated 3 Supreme Court justices and put in a new one. Okay. Go ahead.
So this is what Bolsonaro's trying to do by flipping a seat, flipping,
what he
the trigger.
Liberals.
Yes. No, I think it was 6-3.
I think it was 6-3. Yes. Exactly. So he was at 6-3. The next term, if you guys remember this, what did they try to do to Trump?
Pack the cords.
Do you remember? No, Kamala talk about pack the cords. But do you remember when Colorado was the first state to come out and say what? And you're like, Pat, this is a big deal. This is a big deal.
Off the ballot.
We want to remove him off the ballot. Then other states started coming in and saying what? Yeah, we're going to do it too. Yeah, we're going to do it too. Yeah, we're going to do it too. And then who said, pump the brakes? Not going to happen. Supreme Court Justice.
Yeah.
By the way, what would have happened if it was 6-3 the other way around? If it was 6-3 the other way around, Trump's not president today.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So let me explain to you. If it's 6-3 the other way around, Trump may be in jail today. His kids may be in jail today. Everybody may be in jail today. While I'm in Brazil, you ready for this? 2016, Trump wins election. They call Bolsonaro the Trump Brazil. He wins in 2018. They've both been married 3 times. They both have 3 kids from their first wife, 1 from the second, 1 from the third. Both of them. Okay.
Pause it for 1 second.
Bolsonaro.
Did Bolsonaro also be accused credibly of rape by his one of his ex-wives?
I wouldn't want to say authoritatively no.
I'm just curious.
But you
I
can't
just want to
have
see how
all the
consistent
parallels.
the parallels.
It seemed. Did they have the same moon sign? I mean, honestly.
Also, like, tried coups. Like,
Also, did Donald Trump? Okay, so if Biden is Lula in this instance, although he's more like Bernie, if Biden is like Lula in this instance, like this would have required Biden to have previously been president, right? And for him to have gone to prison on trumped up charges that a conservative judge had engaged in, trumping them up and not Donald Trump, but making them into more than what they were, and then that being disproven and him leaving office.
they're saying that, yeah, it's like lawfare, which Lula was actually imprisoned and spent
Yes.
significant amount of time for, that was supported by our government corruptly. Now he was exonerated, like you said, won back into office.
How is he making Bolsonaro the victim here when Lula was literally in prison for lawfare?
And the way that they reacted to the assassination news when PBD read it up top is they said, like, wow, and like a Bond film.
Yeah.
Like, that's an
Cool.
assassination attempt. It's
Right.
coup, you crazy.
They're telling on themselves. It's like the conservatives who are so wowed by the beeper attack by Israel. It's like, wow, you guys are little children, but keep going.
And Trump. Bolsonaro was in the military for 13 years as a captain. He went and became a Congress for 27 years, of
Great.
which the last 4 years was with his son. Then he ran for president. Do you know how much money he had to run for president? $1 million when he ran against the left. Do you know in the Brazilian media, what they do there is anybody that runs, they decide how much time you get every day. Every morning and every night, they allot you time to go up and talk to the people. Globo is the biggest media. I think they got 39% of all the viewership of all the 9, but Globo's like their biggest one. Do you know his opponent, who was the leader, I think, the Workers' Party, a guy named Haddad? Okay, Rob, if you can pull up Haddad, tall, good-looking guy who's a full-on socialist.
I'm sorry. I need to correct the record here. Like, Bolsonaro was running against Lula. Lula was leading him in the polls. Lula got imprisoned on charges that have now been disproven, and that's how Bolsonaro won. So it's like, oh, this David and the Goliath story who only had $1 million, and then he's citing the rules in Brazil, which are superior to ours. They can't run negative ads, and they do have a lot of time where they can speak to the people. These are things that are actually kind of sensible, as opposed to in our country where you can have a billionaire buy an election.
I'm going to skip a little bit ahead. Do we just get Brian Callen talking about Inspector General and then concluding that actually this is the coup attempt?
$236 billion. That is, I believe, 1/4 of the defense's budget. Okay, so there is, and that's just Biden. So we're going to find that that's chicken feet compared to what they're going to find out.
Again, by the way, this thing, while we're there, before we go, they tell us, when we went with a team of 9, they said, you need an international lawyer. They don't want him to speak. They don't want him to talk about anything. He's not allowed to talk about anything. You know, he was the only president in the world that didn't get a COVID shot.
What?
He's the only president in the world. I mean, we can't count Tanzania and some of these smaller.
Yeah.
He's the only president in the world that refused to take the COVID shot. I love him.
And he's very popular still in Brazil.
Popular. He can't even walk outside, guys. He can't go anywhere.
And so this is a form of a coup, isn't it?
It's
Oh, it's a form of a coup. He's not in power. He also tried to stay in power. Can we just?
Also, he was in the speaking of the not vaccinated, he was in the hospital like half of all the time we're speaking of with different.
Oh, right.
ailments.
It was a big when they had a meeting. We thought like, oh yeah,
with COVID too.
I think that's when that clip of Michael laughing so hard. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah, it was. Yep.
He's not the picture of health, Bolsonaro. He's in the hospital more than he's not. I'm sorry. I sent a 24-second thing cold. I have no idea if this is funny, but like apparently Bolsonaro gave PBD a gift in this exchange, which he showed off.
One of the questions
in this
was it a Bolsonaro coin, a meme coin?
It's a coin.
Oh, good.
One of the questions I asked Bolsonaro, because he's very good friends with PK, I said, hey man, you're born in Senna's birthday, but you're a fan of PK and you guys are friends. So how do you handle this? His answer is funny. And he gave me a coin at the end. This coin is only given to 5 people. Rob, who were the 5 names he said about this coin?
Putin, Trump,
Orban,
Milei, Orban, and you.
And me.
PBD.
He gave these 5 coins.
Wow.
Oh, what a high honor. He gave those are the only times.
What coin? Like who has
Bolsonaro
Challenge coin?
Who has coins?
At least it's a physical coin.
Yeah, it's not a meme coin.
Sounds like an objective interviewer.
Yeah, sounds like somebody, Brazil, if they're like guarding against a coup attempt, might not want to have that guy be the media representative. Like, I there's all this stuff about, don't suppress the speech of like Rumble or whatever in Brazil. I think nation states have a right to stand up with media companies from foreign countries that are attempting to coup monger in their country.
Yeah.
All right, let's take one last call. Calling from a 313 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, is this me?
Yes.
Hey, this is Nicholas calling from Michigan. Well, long-time listener, first-time caller. I just wanted to point out on the first half of the show that you guys talked about Medicaid, and I wanted to really emphasize how important it is, more particularly Medicaid in Louisiana. I currently live in Michigan, but I moved to Louisiana about 2 weeks before COVID hit. And to save a long-winded story about my healthcare journey, I had about 8 or 9 appointments that started off with me thinking I was having a mental breakdown that ended up with me having bone cancer. Oh, wow. I had a tumor on I had a tumor on my skull, and I was working at the time, but I was working 1099 in the state of Louisiana. So I don't believe there was record of me actually working. Maybe there was some sort of allowance due to COVID that allowed me to be on Medicaid. But Medicaid saved my life, and if it weren't, it shouldn't take something like that in someone's life to show them how to advocate for their own health. It took that for me to really have to learn the ins and outs of the medical system in America. And it shouldn't take that for people, because a lot of people, when they're going through health concerns, they don't really have the headspace to even do that. And on top of that, it's created a paradigm where I have to see a doctor every 6 months to make sure I'm not dying, And I have to keep myself on a menial income so I can continue to have Medicaid to make sure that I'm taken care of. I'm sure it's not news to anyone else, but the medical system is a racket, And like your first caller who talked about her struggle within the system, if you've been through the system in that way, it's your responsibility to go out there to your friends, to your neighbors, to your loved ones, and to strangers, and to help them navigate the system so that until we change it, people can get health care and get what they deserve.
Yeah.
And that's all I got.
Well, appreciate the call. Thank you for telling us your story. I mean, we should have single payer health care.
Keep up the fight, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
All right, folks, that ends the phone call portion of the program. Nice northern neighbor. PBD is the bizarro Michael. Tomoff Link. Happy Newsday Tuesday, folks. The time has come for a full European defense union. Europe can't rely on NATO anymore. When European countries combine their militaries, it produces a military roughly the same size as the U.S. military. The resources are there. Is that true? I don't think that's the case. It may produce the same size as U.S. military participation in NATO. But my understanding is that our military is much bigger than that. Yeah. The resources are there, but the coordination needs to be improved. But when the U.S. says Europe needs to spend more on defense, they really mean Europe needs to line the pockets of U.S. defense contractors who line my pockets during every election.
Because their industry isn't there to...
Yes. Also, Thursday last week was my 3-year anniversary of becoming a member of the show. Well, then, Thomas, thank you. And I like how you absolutely did not sabotage Tim Pool's sad attempt into foray into NASCAR.
You missed us last week. Not sure if you heard about it.
Oh, really? Did I miss it?
Yeah.
Or was I actually on a trip?
Looks like the Tim Pool car crashed.
With my pancake compressor and a power driver.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were reports of some guy leaving the pit crew area that wasn't authorized to be there.
Yeah. Right. Someone with the best calves anyone's ever seen. That's how he was identified to the police.
Kowalski from Nebraska. Welcome back, Emma. Your absence yesterday. Sam cursed more than you did in the previous week. He was really working blue. I don't think vacation really helped him. A lot of people who are sick and injured being forced to work in order to afford their medical care also take opioids to function through the pain. We've lost tens of thousands to the system every year.
Well, no, it's the Mexicans that are selling it to us.
Militant apathy. I always thought Kamala's idea to cover home-skilled nursing was a great idea that got no credit. It definitely was a great policy. A great policy that we talked about on this program, and they stopped talking about it about 45 minutes after they brought it up.
Yeah. I mean, they said all the good stuff they wanted to do before the convention, then they locked all that down, including Tim Walz.
I don't understand how you live in this country and have no clue about end-of-life care. Do they not have parents, grandparents, conservatism? It should be on the DSM.
It's hard for people to know how it works.
It's. I mean, look.
Byzantine.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't have any awareness beyond the statistic had I not gone through it, literally gone through it over the past 2 or 3 years. And it was extremely, complicated because you want to try and keep your parent in their home as long as you can. And, you want to try and maximize that as much as possible. Having that home health care would have been an amazing blessing. But yeah, you got to be closer to my age before you deal with it with your parents. And you're not paying attention to what your parents are going through with their parents. CPG. You guys don't understand. With Neuralink, Elon Musk can compartmentalize the part of his brain that's got a conflict of interest from the part of his brain that's high on ketamine from the part of his brain that's objective, but still pro-apartheid.
I mean, and you see how Trump, you were out for their joint interview announcing their engagement. Like isn't that what it looked like? It was like the royal couple. Trump is genuinely wowed by the Neuralink thing. I mean, he gets his eyes widen, and the way he talks about Elon Musk's genius, this is the way a rich guy would who thinks that exercise is bad for you and that your body is a battery, thinks about healthcare. It's also what RFK represents. These rich people who are telling folks how to heal themselves with means that nobody has except to buy their supplements or, get a chip in your brain and enrich Elon Musk. It's crazy. But a guy like Trump, who's been rich his whole life, this is the kind of thing, it's like, Star Wars for him. That's how he thinks about this stuff.
Cho, happy Tuesday. Join the IWW. Left is best. ARC. Medicare Advantage and value-based care is one of the biggest threats to Medicare beneficiaries. I've worked in many roles in healthcare, from finance operations to clinical, etc. Between the consolidation of medical groups via private equity and their pursuit of value-based contracts and shifting of patients to Medicare Advantage plans, I can see a world of hurt for our seniors. Yeah, Medicare Advantage is just a scam. Brooklyn Sue. The intuitive part is they can tell those welfare recipients are unworthy, thanks to Reagan. All right. 10 more. Apple cideritis. Sam said he's taking calls. Get ready for him to take one call at 2:45. You were wrong.
Yeah. Take it.
Bullprog. There's also fraud from groups taking Medicare, Medicaid, but not providing the services.
I mean, Rick Scott He's doing half of all that.
Yeah.
Big Skeletor looking guy.
Yeah.
Cinematology. Sam, if you couldn't find egg, okay, I already did that one. So still on number. Lefty band teacher is number 3. You see Tim Heidegger's coverage of Kevin O'Leary's playing guitar at his house. Worth watching. Watch before during the fun half. KNYC. Please talk about how terrible Andrew Cuomo is, so we can clip it and share it with New Yorkers, so that Cuomo does not become the next mayor.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that this is just name recognition for right now. He's kind of at that 32, 33%.
We do need to do some work on Cuomo. Yeah. Every positive, progressive initiative that this state tried to do under Andrew Cuomo's governorship was thwarted by him both overtly and covertly. And I will also remind New Yorkers that universal pre-K, which if you have a child or plan to have a child, is a huge, huge benefit for you, for other New Yorkers, for education outcomes down the road, had to be fought tooth and nail from Cuomo, who wanted to do everything he could to stop it. Cuomo's also incredibly in the charter school back pocket. Ken Langone is biggest funder. I mean, I could go on and on about Cuomo. We'll do that in a more concerted effort.
Did you see Zoran's piece in Jacobin about Langone, NYU Langone, saying that, like, you might think that Langone is your biggest benefactor, but actually it's the city of New York, and we have rules here, and you should abide them, which is a good intervention.
Good. It's good. He's the man.
A Square. Sam, welcome back. Glad you took some time off. Hope the MR crew does the same at this brutalist time. That day in article analysis, the protests and the resistance acts, big and small, are a ray of light. The show these couple of weeks has been much needed to orient us at what's going on. Want to recommend 2 films for this time. An old one, To Live, with that scene about the chaos after the Chinese Cultural Revolution in a hospital where high schoolers are trying to deliver a baby and there's blood everywhere. Metaphor for Doge. The second one is I'm Still Here, about coping and resistance in the time of the autocratic government in Brazil in the 70s. I've heard about I'm Still Here. It's supposed to be great. I feel like I'll see you all in the streets at some point. Keep it lit.
Yep.
All right, 5 more. Dan from Columbus already read that. Jefferson Davis Vance, the guy whose brainchild, the Doge dividend, said it came to him in a dream. He then tweeted it to Elon. These people are having delusions of grandeur for clout. Yeah. Is that true? Sounds like Mormonism. Devilish. I work for the state government of Wisconsin. Several people in my division are paid with 100% federal funds. They're bracing for layoffs. All of the people in my division are paid between 50 and 75% federal funds. The Doge avalanche will hit state and local governments soon. Randy Bachman. 100% agree with Ronald Reagan. Majority Report wardrobe coordinator looking at the economic polling data. I just want to say F every Nikki Haley primary voter. Dems did nothing but pander to these douchebags, and they went and voted for Trump anyways.
That's true.
Good thing we'll never try to do that again.
Oh, please.
Colonel Berner, just realized my college-age daughter's boyfriend's cultivating a Che Guevara look and is almost a doppelganger at this point. Still not sure how we're supposed to feel about that guy.
Positively?
I think pretty good, all things considered.
I mean, I don't think that's controversial.
Che was a handsome guy.
Yeah.
Just Taylor, when calling my representatives, I've been framing Doge's usurping of the congressional power of the purse as taxation without representation. Elon Musk is now apparently gets to decide where my money goes. I and my fellow constituents have no say in the matter. Well, why the hell should I be taxed in a system like that?
Yep, good point. It makes a mockery of, like, Congress.
Totally. Final IM of the day, Goldman ball sacks. From the end of World War I until 1933, transgender people enjoyed previously unprecedented freedoms and rights. Large leaps were made in transgender medicine through the Institute for Sexual Science, and transgender culture flourished in Berlin. Following the 1932 Prussian coup d'etat, the Nazi seizure of power in 1933, transgender movements gathering places in institutions such as the first homosexual movement, the El Dorado nightclubs, and the Institute for Sexual Science were dissolved, often by force. Both trans men and trans women were targeted under renewed enforcement. Paragraphs 175 and 183 and their transvestite passes were revoked or simply ignored. Books and texts relating to transgender experiences or medicine were destroyed as un-German. All right, folks. Matt, Emma, Bradley, and Abstentia, good job today. Folks, we will see you tomorrow.